My life was tinged with a great need based upon the expectation that I would someday discover the cure for cancer. When I was 4 years old, my father came home from the hospital, something protruding from his throat. He had laryngeal cancer. He was gaunt, his hair was stark white. He had lost an unbelievable amount of weight. He looked extremely fatigued. And I said to him, "What happened?" And he said, "I had cancer, but I'm not dead. I survived it." But in a way, he didn't survive it. So I decided at 4 years old that I would spend my life devoted to finding the cure for cancer. And I went to my mother and I said, "Who's the smartest man in the world?" So the story, in a very real way, begins with Albert Einstein. Because Einstein was looking for the unified field theory, as he put it. He thought it was a set of equations. Stephen Hawking, in A Brief History of Time, believed it was a single, beautiful, simple equation that could explain all reality. I agreed with Hawking later on in my life, but I spent my life studying Einstein. The portrait of Einstein behind me is some oil that I executed a few years ago. A spark of glee, because he knows that what he was after is now available to the world. It was a difficult trek, and I did just about everything to find it. But in 1979, when Albert Szent-Györgyi had an electronic theory of cancer, and he was the first director of the NIH, I recognized that biochemistry was not the appropriate approach. It had to be biophysics. And I had been studying physics quite extensively and recognized something about Michael Faraday's work. You see, the average physicist believes that when you move a conductive body through a magnetic field, you have an induced electromotive force. Or when you have a changing magnetic field that is moving through a conductive body, you have an induced electromotive force. Now, Faraday made it very clear that when a body is moving through a magnetic field, there must be an energy induced therein. Now consider everything that's on the Earth. The Earth is moving through space around the sun at 3 times 10 to the 6 centimeters per second, about 18.5 miles per second. The Earth is spinning around at about 1,000 miles an hour. Our solar system is moving through a local star cluster system at about 12.5 miles per second. And the local star cluster system is moving through the galaxy 10 times faster than that. And the galaxy itself is moving faster than that. So there is no such thing as immobility. There is no such thing as anything maintaining rest. So when we consider Newton's law, anything at rest or in constant motion will remain as such unless acted on by an external force. But what he's actually proposing is that the inertia of a body, that is the constant velocity motion of a body through space, nevertheless cuts magnetic lines of force, because the entire cosmos is filled with magnetic activity. In 1979, I recognized that I could take the Lorentz force equation and just solve for a single Gauss, which is a unit of magnetic flux density. When you solve the magnetic component of the Lorentz force equation, you simply find that a Gauss is equal to mass over charge times time. But charge is material. In spite of its capacity to move in certain ways relative to other material bodies, nevertheless, the ultimate point charge is the electron. So if we have a gram over an ab-coulomb times a second, the ab-coulomb has a particular mass. Thus, we can evaluate from that standard equation that a single Gauss, or a single unit of magnetic flux density, is equal to 1.75 times 10 to the 7 grams per second. That is, there's an enormous amount of invisible mass that is constantly moving relative to visible mass, relative to that which is perceivable. This led me to believe that I could establish a different kind of an equation, because Faraday's equation for electromotive force is equal to BVL. EMF equals BVL. B being flux density, V the velocity of L the length of a conductive body. But as long as that conductive body is moving through a magnetic field, it's cutting lines of force. There's an energy induced therein. Electromotive force is measured in volts. A volt is a joule per coulomb, energy per unit charge. Therefore, energy is equal to BVLQ, Q being a single unit of charge. Energy is defined as mc squared by Einstein. Simply put, if we look at Newton's force equation, F equals ma, and we simply multiply both sides of that equation by distance, you get force times distance equals energy equals MAL, L being length. So it's M, A is distance over time squared, and then you have distance squared over time squared. Therefore, it's very simple to derive E equals mc squared from F equals ma. It's just simple common sense. You don't need anything eclectic to solve that. Therefore, in 1979, I discovered the unified field equation. The unified field equation, simply put, is mc squared equals BVLQ. mc squared is energy, intrinsic or rest energy of a mass. BVLQ is the electromagnetic interaction energy of any conductive body as it interacts with an electromagnetic field, promulgating an elastic deformation of dark matter or dark energy, which is propitiated by the production of a quantized vibration of the atomic crystal lattice structure in the mass itself. Therefore, you have a photon, phonon transduction, or conversion. That simply explains every interaction throughout the universe. It explains how every mass is affected by everything else. It explains quantum theory of entanglement. It explains a Aharonov-Bohm effect. It explains everything there is to explain. After I discovered this equation, I recognized that I could literally establish a biological system as a conductive body. If a biological system is a conductive body, and of course we know it is, then any magnetic field moving through the conductive body would produce an electromotive force therein, or an energy produced therein, which could convert electromagnetic oscillations to mechanical vibrations, which is the piezoelectric effect. The field of ultrasonics is based upon piezoelectricity. There's no question that all the matter of biological systems is piezoelectric. As a matter of fact, all matter in the universe is piezoelectric to some extent. What this means is that we're now capable of tuning into any particle which is in the human body, or any other living system, or any inanimate system for that matter. It's very simple. M is the mass of your target. mc squared is the intrinsic energy of your target mass. BVLQ represents therein B being the flux density that the body is exposed to, L the longest dimension of the body, V the constant velocity motion or inertial velocity, and Q is a unit charge. Therefore, we can calculate the necessary magnetic flux density required to affect any particle in the body. Any enzyme, any hormone, any atom, any subatomic particle, down to electrons, quarks, neutrinos, any kind of particle that you want to tune into, you can. And you can affect them collectively, coherently, so that you may control the congruent oscillatory trajectories of any particle and all particles that you're targeting within the human body. Therefore, the proposal was that the natural magnetic profile of the human body is a magnetic field that's very weak, much weaker than anything that anybody could have imagined before. The natural magnetic profiles of the human body are generally in the picotesla range. Pico is 10 to the minus 12, and a Tesla is 10 to the 4 Gauss. So we're talking about a field 10 to the minus 8 Gauss. Now there are investigators that have gone down to a picogauss and even to a femtogauss. And recent calculations that I made go down to an attogauss. The point being that these magnetic profiles can reorient the atomic crystalline structure of the various targets that comprise living systems in such a way so that they renormalize the structure and function of tissue. Normal frequencies for the brain range from 0 to about 30 hertz. Very seldom they go higher than 30 hertz. Delta frequencies are 0 to 4 hertz. And then we have theta, and then alpha is generally 8 to 12 hertz. And we can influence magnetic profiles which are changed by disease and or injury to become too weak or too strong. When we renormalize magnetic profiles of tissue, we can eliminate disease. This has been done at several major institutions: nerve regeneration and peripheral nerves, restoring mitochondria, restoring the axonal membrane, Golgi bodies, neurofilaments, microtubules. This work was done at Cornell and also Fairleigh Dickinson. Effects on the heart using parasympathetic stimulation have demonstrated that we can affect heart rate and rhythm. And there are studies currently undergoing that are aimed at ameliorating atrial fibrillation and even congestive heart failure. There have been wound healing studies in rats that show that incisions heal much faster, either sutured or unsutured, when exposed to particular magnetic protocols. Cancer cells have been demonstrated to be markedly affected by various magnetic protocols at Mississippi State University. There are a number of different studies that indicate that the method by which to ameliorate disease and or injury has been discovered. Has it been taken to its final point of wonder? No, not yet. Because after 40 years of skepticism, of stupidity, of selfishness, of God only knows what, it's very difficult to make a dent in the consciousness of the people who run things. But it's very important that now that we see that the world has been captivated by a virus, now we see that oil and natural gas and coal have to be eliminated as energy sources. Now that we see that the world needs to change, must go through a transformation. Otherwise, the proposed revelation, the apocalypse, would no doubt occur. This is not a religious statement. This is a reality statement. It's a reality check. The fact of the matter is that the unified field equation, which is now called Jacobson resonance, needs development. And with development, we will unerringly produce controlled, commercially viable thermonuclear fusion power. We will provide the method to reorder the magnetic profile of any tissue in the body, keeping in mind that all living systems are comprised of atoms. Atoms are permanent spinning magnets composed of subatomic particles, which are themselves permanent spinning magnets. And how these little magnets spin regulates the communications between the agglomeration of atoms that make us up. I've published a book called Dark Matter, Dark Energy. The book points out that most of the matter in the universe is dark. It's invisible. It's untouchable. Or relatively untouchable, I should say. There are virtual photonic fluxes that we notice as microwave radiation, background radiation. Nevertheless, at least 85% of the universe is dark matter, and astrophysicists are saying that 25% of the energy density is dark matter. I believe, based upon calculation, that the invisible matter comprises more than 99% of the universe. Much more than 99% of the universe. It's very important to note that in the first section of this book, I deal with a commercially viable thermonuclear fusion power methodology. It's been done only once in a small experiment, but it needs to be replicated by at least 2 universities as soon as possible. It is necessary to eliminate the need for coal and oil and natural gas and other energy sources that are simply, using up the vital substance of our earth. In the meanwhile, of course, we must use these methods, these energy production methods, to sustain the human race. But the future of the human race is totally dependent upon fusion power. The secret for fusion power is in this book. Read the book. Do the experiments. The world will change. The second half of the book deals with medicine. Now, I'm not now making any claims. I'm an independent speaker. I have no affiliation with anybody. I have no affiliation with any entity. I'm simply speaking as an individual. The method by which to ameliorate and produce the death of the most important diseases that plague the universe, that plague the earth today, is in this book. The method is in this book. It's utilization of very weak magnetic fields, beginning at a picotesla range and going down from there. Consider that when you want to influence an atom, you don't need a strong field to influence a single atom because it's so small. You need a weak field to influence individual atoms. Thus, the idea that stronger is better is antediluvian. It's antiquated. We have to forget about it. The use of ionizing radiation, the use of poisons to treat disease, that's going to be a thing of the past. The thing of the future is Jacobson resonance. There is no doubt about it. Another book that's available is Reason for Life. Reason for Life deals with my art, my poetry. It has a short story, a philosophical essay, and a scientific article. It's an introduction to my life. I suggest that everyone pick up these books, most especially Dark Matter, Dark Energy, and learn what life is really about. Everything in the universe is connected to everything else. It's connected via this invisible matter. Everything in the universe is based upon order, not entropy. Entropy is a relativistic perception. All disorder is ordered. If it wasn't ordered, we couldn't perceive it.